Goyal, parents, and students. I welcome you all to today's career fair, Infinitum, being held by DLDAV Shalimar Bagh. Before we begin today's session of career counseling for energy, finance, and multilateral banking, I would like to invite Ananya Gupta of Class 11D to present and welcome our guest speaker, Ms. Surbhi Goyal. Over to you, Ananya.
Greetings, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to invite our key speaker, Ms. Surbhi Goyal. She is presently Senior Energy Specialist in World Bank's Energy and Extractives Global Practice and is also leading innovative projects in the area of renewable energy. Ms. Goyal's contribution in renewable energy sector is remarkable. Her pioneer work has been duly respected and appreciated. She is one of the Asia's most influential women in renewable energy sector. Ms. Goyal is also responsible for promoting nascent technologies in this sector and has helped Ministry of Power and Power Grid Corporation on various energy-led projects. Masters in Economics from Delhi School of Economics, Ms. Goyal is also our proud alumna. Please welcome Ms. Surbhi Goyal. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Ananya, and thank you so much, Tori, ma'am. And thanks to all of you for connecting today. I think it is one of those, days where you have deja vu, and when you see your teachers and when you are on the other side speaking to the students, it's a different feeling altogether. And I hope that after a few years, you all will come back and also share your experiences and help other students to come forward and take up the jobs that are there waiting for you all. So thank you again. And Ananya has introduced me very nicely. I'm so glad. Thank you so much, Ananya. So just a quick rewind of my education and then, my journey of how I landed up in World Bank, etc. So I passed out from DAV in year 2000. And since then, I must say that it has been a fabulous journey for me. In the school, we learned so many things that I realized later on how important they were. So some of them we did imbibe and grasped. Some of them we just let it go. But these 2 years, when you are in class 11 and 12, I think these are the turning points for any student in the in their lifetime. So I would suggest that when you are in your capacities and when you are towards the end of the year, please put in all your efforts because this can really help you in taking forward in your careers. And this is a very good initiative that the school has taken to bring back the alumni, to connect you with so many dignitaries. I would say I have been listening to the recordings of the previous 2 days, and everybody has very, very interesting insights. If you are able to find what your strength is, where you would like to go, how you would want to shape your career, this is where you think and it will be done. So please take notes if you need. Be as interactive as possible. Ask as many questions. I may not be able to answer all the questions, but I will try to get back to you through ma'am. So don't worry about it. Just relax and just concentrate on where you would like yourself to see 7 or 8 years down the line. So that perspective at this age is equally important as what you are studying. So coming to me, as I mentioned, I passed out from school in 2000 and then I enrolled for bachelor's in economics. And then I did my master's in economics from Delhi School of Economics. And since then, it has not been any looking back for me. And I must say that getting into either bachelor's degree or master's degree wasn't easy for me. There were always hiccups. So in bachelor's degree also, I missed the first list. I didn't fill in any forms. I got in the waiting list, in the second list, and then the economics colleges were running out and they were not letting me in. So I really had a tough time just because of a silly mistake that I did. So please be very careful about when the timelines are there for filling in the forms in your desired course. So just focus with whole heart and things will come through. Similarly, in Masters of Economics also, I again didn't get through in the first list in the Delhi School of Economics. It was a waiting list, and I didn't even bother to check. I was like, of 120 students, how will I appear? There are like thousands and thousands of students appearing throughout the country. I didn't even bother to check the waiting list, and that was again a mistake that I did. I didn't learn from my previous mistake that I did in the graduation. So I would say that do not lose heart. That is one lesson that I learned. Keep focusing, keep doing whatever you can, and leave it for the better things to be returned to you. So my friend told me that yes, you are on the waiting list, and that was the last day. I had just 1 hour before the admissions in the waiting list were closing. So I was fortunate that at least somebody was there watching out for me and reverted to me. But for you, it may not be the case. So do not lose heart and keep looking out for wherever you can, whatever you can do. So after that, I get into the consulting, and thanks again to Delhi School of Economics. They run a very fabulous job fair, and in that, I again didn't get into the topmost ones, and I'm very thankful that I didn't get in there because I was so disheartened that so many students have been picked up, and the ones whom I think were not even studying got into some very, very good jobs. So I was actually very disheartened at that point in time as well. But again, destiny had something good for me. So I was like in the remaining last 10, 12 students who were not yet placed, but then this consulting job landed and I picked it up. I wasn't sure what exactly the consultancy means and what exactly I would be required to do in there, but I just picked up because I didn't want to be left out. So I was in consultancy for about 2 years. That was ICRA Management Consulting Services. So ICRA is a very reputed credit institute, credit rating agency in the country. So I was at their consulting arm. I didn't know till that point in time, even though I had did my master's in economics. Again, I was as free as you guys maybe at this point in time that we will look at it whenever it will happen. It's still some time away. So, so these kind of things do happen. But important is that you do not lose your focus. My focus was to get into the job, do something good for myself and for the nation. And when I was there in consultancy for 2 years, this vacancy in the World Bank landed up. I'm not sure how well do you know about World Bank. If it had been face-to-face session, maybe I would have prompted some of you to come back and ask and answer me that what you think the World Bank does. But let me here explain that what World Bank does. So World Bank is a multilateral development bank. It's not like a normal commercial bank, which you would see in the nooks and corners of the country. It is a bank which supports the government. It supports the government's policies, regulations. It supports the infrastructure projects. You cannot just go and open an account there because it doesn't provide that kind of facilities. It's a different ballgame altogether. Many a times I had received the calls, oh ma'am, you are working with the World Bank. Can you please help me get an account in your financial intermediary? And I was like, sorry, sir, or ma'am, this is not the right place to be because it is not a commercial bank. It is not a open for public. So the bank name sometimes is misnomer, but it has a deeper meaning. So what World Bank does is that it has development goal in its agenda. And when you say development, so what we do is not only look at the infrastructure from the perspective of putting in the funds or investments, but we also look at developing the client, the public sector counterpart that we have on the other side, on their corporate governance mechanisms, financial mechanisms, how we can strengthen the entity, because our role could be a very small. We could just fund maybe a couple of their projects, but they had a bigger portfolio. How we can strengthen their capacities so that they can take on the responsibilities on their own and deliver the projects in a more sustainable manner. And when I say sustainable, it has a very important dimension that we figure out and we consider environmental norms that we should be as possible as we can be avoiding the harm to the nature. We talk about climate change, these big goals, and trust me, World Bank is in the center of all these big things that you hear, and this is actually happening. And this is very much the priority for the government. When I say the priority for the government, it automatically prioritizes the way the businesses work, where you will be getting into these jobs after your graduation or post graduation. So I would suggest that when you are looking through your strengths and weaknesses, do a deeper dive into what you think would this entail. I know as of now, if I were in your place in class 11 and 12, I was just focusing on I need to get the marks, I need to get into this course, and I will think about it later. That is absolutely fine. But this macro or the bigger picture, you should never lose hold of. So why I was saying that, why I was emphasizing on the government's role is because the way the entire sector. So I am working in energy and extractives, as Ananya mentioned. So energy sector is again a huge sector. There are multiple technologies, but because the government's focus is now on climate change, the entire business of energy sector has now moved on to renewable energy, which means solar, wind, because there is variability in the generation, how the newer businesses like battery storage systems can come in, how green hydrogen can come in, how we can decarbonize the sectors beyond energy sector. So everything is being changed. Electric vehicles is being introduced. Every new technology brings new job opportunities, new career progressions. So that is where I'm trying to bring your attention towards. There are many, many, many fields which one has, open for commerce students, and I will go through them briefly. But what I'm trying to emphasize here is that those are not the only ones. There are multiple other fields that are opening every day. So please, when you decide on where you want to go, you should look at the various policies of the government and where the headwinds are in that particular sector. So coming specifically to the few areas where a commerce student like yourself can look at, first is banking, right? And there are multiple, again, avenues within banking. I will briefly touch upon some of them. So one is commercial banking. The commercial banking would be in either public sector banks, it could be Indian private banks, it could be international banks. For Indian public sector banks, one has to appear for the bank probationary officer exams. For Indian private and international banks, you would need to look out for the vacancies and some desired experience that generally they ask for. Again, these all are very, mundane kind of, jobs, I would say. But again, it depends on the interest. It also is very, so to say, reputed kind of avenues where one gets into and then can move into much higher and much bigger goals. So I would come through it also in a few minutes. The other sort of banking, which is very, so to say, admired by various financiers or the commerce students, the investment banking. We have heard about these big names, but what exactly they mean? I will give you a quick synopsis because I have a couple of more, pointers. So I would not just take all the time on the investment banking. But what it means is that you evaluate the company's financial needs and help it raise the capital to meet these requirements. Various degrees that could help you to land up there is BCom honors, bachelor's in business administration, master's in business administration, of course, is much more desirable. Bachelor's in finance, economics, etc., can also contribute towards this goal. So investment banking is something, if you have really a knack of numbers or financial, strategies, there is where you should definitely look at. Linked to it is a corporate finance. Now, again, in corporate finance, over the years, since I passed out in 2000, 2 decades ago, lot has changed. The entire landscape has changed, right? The corporates look out for many, many more kind of versatile careers or the job descriptions. You could be a chartered accountant, you could be a company secretary, you could be a chartered financial analyst. Chartered financial analysts are generally portfolio managers. How you want to assign the risk return matrix for a corporate, right? So that kind of, so these degrees are very much, you know, are there, and you all can, you know, essentially look through it, read through it, assess that what meets your strengths. That is important. What meets your strength, because your career is something which you are going to marry for the entire lifetime, right? If I can say so. So if you are not happy in your career, you would always be looking out for a change. So you have to just keep, you know, working step by step. I don't say that you have to uh, decide right now, but you have like 2 years now for 11th class, 1 year for 12th, or almost half a year now, and then 3 years at least for bachelor's and another 2 years for graduation. So you have these 5 to 6 years where you can develop and you can get that outlook at where you want to go. Then there comes actuaries. Generally, you would find actuaries in the insurance companies, and they look at the probabilities of the risk of future events, and then they advise the insurance companies about how they should strategize. Ideally, they would specialize in one of the sectors. It could be, say, life insurance or health insurance, or etc. But again, they are very highly reputed, you know, job profiles. So please do look out for them as well. I briefly mentioned about the financial planning and accounting. So again, there is a degree associated with it, which is called Chartered Financial Planner. So it again adds to the bouquet of the various options that you have. Then we have risk management profiles also. Now, what they do, again, you know, within the corporate finance, there are many verticals that have developed over the time. Some may be complementary, some may be mutually, you know, segregated subsets, but all of these are now in individual fields in itself. So whatever I may be speaking, it may feel like that I'm repeating a couple of things, but trust me, these are very different when you actually go deeper into it. So when we talk about the risk management, what they generally do, these analysts or the specialists, they manage the company's risk. It could be identifying the risk, strategizing, and putting the measures in place that can help plug the various risks that a company is facing. Again, for this, the bachelor's or master's in risk management is available. Generally, the risk management degrees are preferable, but then you also stand a good chance if you have degrees in economics or in accounting or in finance. So that is again a very important and very, you know, I would say a strong um, line that you can take up as your career. And then there is another new dimension, which was earlier there, but at least I wasn't aware at my time. Had I known, maybe I would have been somewhere else. But again, whatever God does, it does for some reason. And I'm very happy from where I have come and where I have reached. But this particular field is called Treasury, which looks at financial planning, budgeting, general financial oversight, funding, fundraising. So it's basically how you can support a given company or a corporate in achieving their goals. I spoke about renewable energy, for instance. If you look a decade ago in 2010, there were not many companies. They were all sitting by the fence because the cost of the renewable energy was very high. People were not ready to buy that higher tariff. But in a decade itself, and since 2015, if I can specifically say, in last 5 years, the growth in renewable energy sector is phenomenal. It has grown leaps and bounds, and the tariffs have come down drastically. It used to be 18 rupees. The electricity charges that you pay, basically, that is what we call tariff in our technical term. So tariffs which were at 18 rupees in 2010 are now at 2 rupees in 2020. In 2015, they were about 3.5 rupees. Today, they are just at 2 rupees. And what happens as a commerce student, just put your brains together. What will happen if this kind of opportunity is there? Everybody would try to get a piece of cake, right? So many investments are flowing in the renewable energy sector that you can't even imagine. It's like India itself needs about $20 billion of investment every year for next 5 years to achieve the climate change goals that India has committed for. But for the corporates to come in, how would they strategize? They need all these kind of services, whether it's treasury, whether it's risk management, whether it's financial planning, etc. So I'm just giving you a flavor, combining what career options you have and the experience that I have from on the ground. And this all is real. I am not making up things, trust me. There are another opportunities that come up in mergers and acquisition side of the things. This is again a very, very decent and very, very high profile kind of engagement, if I can say so. So please do look out for those as well. But the trajectory would again remain from finance, accounting, etc. Coming from my sector or my perspective from the multilateral development banks, as I mentioned to you, that they provide a development angle. Generally, they would all need master's degree, at least 2 years of experience. But I must say, these are highly paid jobs, most of them tax-free. They're highly reputed. You would get into the meetings. Sorry, just 1 minute, please. Just 1 minute. I'm very sorry. So, these are highly reputed jobs. So the meetings that you would never expect to be held with the very senior management of the sector, you get those meetings with these, high. Sorry, 1 minute. I'm very sorry. My children are just, jumping around, so I just had to push them out of the room. So these are very high, I would say these are very highly connected jobs. You can easily get access to all those people who are out there, who are the policymakers, who are the regulators, who are making those changes in the system day in and out. Otherwise, in any other jobs, it's very difficult to get access to such people. So that is why it's a very reputed job. What also takes me from here when I talk about the government, the civil services is another opportunity that one should look at if you have a nag to serve the government. UPSC exams are happening every year. You need to prepare for it thoroughly. But again, this is a job that everybody dreams of. I personally had the dream of being an IS myself. However, I lost steam after I joined World Bank because I was so happy, and I think I was in such a comforting, job because it gave me so much in 1.5 decades that I couldn't even imagine. So I didn't even, attempted the civil services exam. A couple of more points from me on the fields that you can look at. There is public accounting, field also, which provides a lot of accounting services to other firms. And the degree generally that one needs to go for is certified public accountant. Then you have stock markets. That is again a very, very, growing segment, I would say. A lot of equity research firms, a lot of other firms are deeply engaged, and it's directly related to the commerce field. So that is one thing which you can look at. And again, as we are looking at, the newer segments of the business, for instance, renewable energy, there are newer products that are being launched, like green bonds, which are the bonds which raise finance for certain specific investments. If you Google it, these are the most hot words in the finance industry these days. Masala bonds, similar to these lines as green bonds, but specific to certain segments or countries. So these are what the stock markets can and provide more opportunities for you. And consultancy is evergreen opportunity for you, for anyone who wants to maybe start their career, learn from the basics. They are the ones who actually go deeper into each and every sector. If I talk from my perspective, we come up with so many consulting assignments every year. We get the inputs from these consulting firms, We work through their assessments, through their recommendations, and provide them the recommendations, when I say them, to the government bureaucrats or the civil servants, as I mentioned in my previous anecdote. So there, this is how the entire chain looks like. And these recommendations are then deliberated with these civil servants. Some of them are imbibed in the government's thinking, and you see the policy regulatory landscape changing. What it helps is that it brings the policy and regulatory landscapes, bring more commercial investments into the mainstream. If you have a lot of roadblocks, for instance, if I talk about any project in renewable energy, if I talk about the land clearances, if a commercial investor has to come in, the person has to run from pillar to post, from environment department to forest department to land or revenue department to the authorities who are going to set up the project or support the setting up of the project. Lot of these multiple windows of clearances are there. So government's trust is always how they can minimize the approval and clearances process. And in there, it is governed by policies, it is governed by regulations. And commerce is a right fit to channelize our thinking processes towards policies, regulatory mechanisms, etc. So these are the various fields. As of now, you are seeing fewer aspects of it. When you choose the bachelor's, maybe in commerce or in economics, finer detailing will start coming in. In masters, further fine tuning of it will come in, and you will see that what I'm talking about looks overlapping, but there are actually multiple fields out there that you would need to judge, assess, and take your decision on. I will stop just after this last point that I want to make. As we have seen in the COVID times, digitization is very important, and it's gaining more and more prominence as we are talking. For us, when we are investing in a project, and I said that we are a development bank, so we just do not just finance the project and get done with it. What we do is we help and handhold the utilities or the counterparts, and we do regular monitoring of the projects, whether the infrastructure is being built as being told to us, whether the environmental social norms are being factored in by the government utilities or not. All these things we personally go and check on the ground. But due to COVID times, our organization has stayed put on any travel. We have not gone out of our homes for last 10 months. How we can do our due diligence, if I can call it, or our checks and balances. So we are ourselves deploying a lot of such remote project monitoring and supervision, which depends heavily on the digitization, on artificial intelligence, on blockchain technologies. These all look very big, big names, but each and every segment in itself is a huge ocean. There are many, many things, many new opportunities coming in, many new opportunities within the renewable energy sector, as I mentioned. What I am doing today is focusing on how I can take the renewable energy sector, the cheaper tariffs or the prices that we as consumer are paying to other sectors like transport. If we talk about electric vehicles, decarbonizing is a heavy word, but this is what we call in technical language how we can decarbonize or reduce the carbon emissions for other sectors. And this opens up plethora of opportunities for people like yourself who are looking for next 5 to 10 years to get into the job market. Green hydrogen is one thing which is going to pick up a pace. Green hydrogen is something which is going to pick up in next 8 to 10 years. This is the time when you will be getting in there. So do factor in, I wanted to bring this to your attention that this is going to be another game changer in the energy field at least. Digitization, as I mentioned, please in whichever way you can learn about it, you can try to bring that in your umbrella, do that. It's going to help you in any sector that you go, and that has been proven in the COVID times. So please go ahead. And last but not the least, as bank, again, I'm emphasizing we are a development bank. We look at equitable growth. We realized that not only in India, but across the globe, the female labor force participation is very abysmal. It's very small. We see that most of the females take up jobs like teaching or jobs like, in what I would say, telecommuting, not telecommuting, it's like telepresence systems, etc. When you call up in call centers, etc., which are more amenable in the daytime, etc. But as we are seeing more digitization happening and more children getting, opportunities to get into various fields, the education to the females is now taking a turn. We are seeing higher numbers in engineering, but we again then see the dropouts when the women join the careers, when they join certain jobs. They might have to drop out after marriage or after, any life event that happens. So there are very conducive policies that corporates, the governments, the development banks like ourselves are adopting to promote the retention of females into the labor force. So I would strongly recommend that, we have always seen in our previous generations that the economies are dominated by males, but now the females are also getting an equal chunk. And I can vouch for it, at least from my generation. And again, I can say so because I am now 2 decades older than you. So in my generation itself, the husbands, or I would say the families, are becoming very more amenable for women to go out and work. In next few years, it's going to get better. So please do not think that how will I manage. Initial few years might be difficult, might be a bit challenging, but do not lose hope. So maybe I'll stop there. I've spoken like at length without giving you any chance to talk. I see one question that has come up in the chat box on actuaries. Actuaries is generally, and I will give in a very simplistic manner to you, Srishti. Actuaries is a job or a profile which assesses that if your company, in this case, if I take an example of insurance company, has provided, say, health insurance to thousands of people, what is the risk that these insurances that you have issued will be actually encashed? What is the probability of these risks turning true? So they undertake the risk assessment in the field that you are in. For instance, if I take about the health insurance, what are the probability, what are the various risks? First, they list those. They then attach the probabilities of those risks and how you can manage those risks. This really helps in developing the the coverages that are provided by the insurance companies. If you see that due to COVID, many of the cases are going up, so that would help in the insurance companies to, manage their provisions for the risk profiles that they are giving to the customers. So actuaries, in simplistic words, look like that profile. I hope I'm able to answer your question. I would like you to please maybe unmute yourself and say, I can see some hands raised. Maybe first, Yakshit from 11C, if you want to come on and can speak.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, there are so many myths that the banking job is like 9 to 4 job. Is it really so?
Very good question, Yakshit. So again, the myth is generally for the public sector banks only. However, I must say, and please do not consider me taking any political sides, but frankly and truly, since Mr. Modi has become our prime minister, we have seen that the standards in the public sector banks have also changed. They have now, there are these fingerprint systems that have been installed. Earlier, we used to say 9 to 5 jobs, but people used to come at 10, leave by 4, and all those, things used to happen. And we at our times used to hear the stories that women are knitting the sweaters while sitting in the banks. But trust me, lot of checks and balances are now being introduced even in the public sector banks. Private sector banks is your normal corporate job. So from there, I don't think that these kind of things would come up, you would be doing more than expected or you anticipated. So be ready for it. But again, the hard work always pays.
So after a decade, it has a value or not in a banking,
See,
public or a
banking
private
is
sector?
there to stay. Banking is there to stay forever. You cannot have any economy if you do not have banks, if you do not have financial intermediaries. Bank is the way. Think from that perspective. I have savings. If I do not have a place to put in, like a bank, how will I get returns? And for the corporates, so what bank does, they do not keep the savings with themselves. They use this pot of money and invest in infrastructure projects. So unless you have this pot of money or this mechanism called banking in between, how would an infrastructure financing be done? For any investment, you need about 70% to 80% debt or loans that come from these banks. So the returns that you get on your savings account or on your fixed deposits or your, whatever savings in form you have put in the bank comes from these projects where bank has in turn invested, right?
Yes, ma'am. And ma'am, one more question. As you are
Please.
in the World Bank, so in the World Bank, is it related to finance also?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are doing project financing. So I would request if you can Google Rewa Solar Project, REWA Solar Project in Madhya Pradesh. You would see that it's a huge project. And after a month or so, we are going to upload another video as we're talking. The shooting of the site is going on. But that is important for you guys to look at it, what World Bank does. We do infrastructure financing. We have Riva Solar Project. We have the, again, it's a technical term, so I'm not sure how would I explain, but a lot of, for instance, national highways has been built by either World Bank support, and I'm not just vouching for World Bank. There are other multilateral banks also, like ADB, Asian Development Bank. There is a new bank that has come up, Alternate Investment Infrastructure Bank, AIIB. There is new development bank that is coming up. There are bilateral banks like KfW, which is a German bank. So all these banks, we all support government in infrastructure financing. We put in our funds, the funds that we raise from the countries, we put in our funds in these infrastructure projects. So we are party to it, right? And our tenors are not like 10 to 12 or 15 years, which generally the commercial banks give, but our tenors is 25 to 35 years, which eases out the burden on the utilities. And hence, we generally come in wherever the newer technologies are being spoken about because we want to bring down their cost. So that is why I was saying that green hydrogen is something which I, in my personal capacity, in my professional capacity in the bank, is beginning to do in the World Bank. And we hope that sooner or later, this is going to open up a lot of job opportunities for people like yourselves. Hope I was able to explain to you, Yakshi.
Yes, ma'am.
I Thank you. We have more hands here. Manan, 11D, Manan Joshi.
Good morning, ma'am. Ma'am, my question
Hi,
is
good
that,
morning.
what are the steps to become an investment banker, and what the skills do you require for it?
Sure. So for investment banker, again, I would ask you to look up because since my time, things have changed a lot. I did brush up my understanding and knowledge, but again, I would suggest that please have a look on Google. Mr. Google knows everything, as we all know. But to give you briefly the flavor of what it means, for the investment banking, you need to have a commerce degree, BCom honors, or bachelor's in business administration. MBAs definitely would be a feather in the cap. Bachelor's in finance and economics, or economics, I should say, are equally good. These all, and of course, then in investment banking also, you are now getting every day very specialized skills. So once you have that kind of understanding, go through the detailed requirements for being an investment banker. Okay,
Okay,
so we
ma'am.
have one question in the chat box also. Oh, sorry, Manan, you were saying something?
Ma'am, I was saying thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thanks a lot. Janvi has asked question, which entrance exam is given for the bank job? So for public sector banks, there is bank's probationary officer exam that you need to give. For the private sector banks, for international private sector banks, the opportunities keep coming up. So maybe I'm not sure. There are these, firms or these portals called Naukri.com, etc. I would strongly recommend that you should sign up for them so that you get to know what kind of jobs are coming or what kind of requirements they need for those jobs. So that might help you. And for private sector banks, also similarly, they keep on floating these announcements. But again, do brush up your requirements once before you make up your mind, because I do not want to mislead you. I may not be comprehensive enough in all the requirements that they may have. Okay, there is one question that Yakshit has asked, but I'll come to it, Yakshit. There are more hands which I can see. Kashika from 11D.
Good morning, ma'am. Ma'am, I
Hi.
want to ask that is it necessary that we have to opt for eco or any other commerce subject for our graduation and masters to get into these job profiles?
See, Kashika, that's a very valid question. And there are many opportunities now, as I mentioned. So, one is finance, one is business administration, one is economics, one is commerce. There are more opportunities that are coming up in international business. So, depending on what kind of profile you ultimately want to land up yourself in, what is your nag? I would suggest please look at, do some research on it, and then first of all, my first recommendation is do not leave any stone unturned. Apply in whatever course you want to and whatever course you can, because you never know that you have something in mind, but you may not get through it. So apply in whatever courses you can think through. And then if you're lucky to get more than one options available to you, do some background research about it and then pick and choose. But yes, for most of these jobs, these are the basic requirements. However, there are many people who are now going beyond these mundane jobs. So I can see, and you have interacted with some of them, people are now so in my batch, for instance, in Delhi School of Economics, after doing masters, many people are now artists. Some of them are photographers. So there is no limit to what you can and you cannot do. So that is why find your interest, because your job is something which you will be doing, or your career is something which you will be doing throughout, right? And you really need to enjoy it. That is the way to enjoy the life. So that is my recommendation. Do some research. This research will go a long way. Hope that addresses your question, Kashika. To some extent, may not be entirely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Most welcome. Arshit from 11C.
Ma'am, you just mentioned about CPA. Can you please elaborate about that?
So CPA is again, a public accountant, which looks at the providing services to the other firms. So, these are these are like a specialized firm. For instance, as a company, I'm giving a simpler analogy to you. As a company, I may recruit one CA, right? But then you have a firm which is full of CAs, which provides you with auditing services. So after, as a corporate, if I am a corporate X, after every year, I need to go through annual audit, which is called statutory audit. Statutory means mandatory. You have to do it if you need to be continuing in your business, right? So similarly, so these kind of auditing services provided by these CA firms, which are specialized in these services. Similarly, there is this CPA, and again, I would request you to do more Google, because CPA is what looks at the services that are collectively provided to many firms. So that would be my incomplete answer to you, Arshit. But feel free to reach out to me if I get more on it. I will definitely write back to Dolly ma'am, and I will request her to pass on the information to you. So that is something. In interest of time, let me move on to the next hand, Aditya from 11D. Aditya, we can't hear you. You might be on mute.
Okay, I'm sorry, ma'am. Good
No
morning,
worries.
ma'am. Am I
Good
audible?
morning. Yes, yes, you are.
Ma'am, my question is that you mentioned that in earlier years when our GDP, the country's GDP was not that much, why was the tariff was so high, and in the now stage why it is reduced to only reach 2%? What could be the key reasons for that?
Arshit, so Aditya, sorry, you're breaking up a bit. If you won't mind, can you put it in the chat box? I understand part of your question, which you were asking GDP
Yes,
and then
ma'am.
why
Yes.
tariffs were higher. Can you try once again?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Actually, I wanted
yeah,
to ask that why was tariff was so high in the earlier years of our country's growth, and why it is reduced to rupees 2
yeah.
in now
Recent
present
years.
at
Okay.
present.
So a short answer to that question, Aditya, and again, in interest of time, that it wasn't high for the country as a whole. It was high for a given technology, which was solar. We were still getting our electricity at comparable prices, but it was mostly coming by burning coal. And you all know if you burn coal, it will emit carbon dioxide. The greenhouse gas emissions are higher. So, how to move from those polluting power projects to cleaner and greener projects? The newer technology that was introduced then was solar. And over the time, as more and more projects came up, and in economics, and Dolly ma'am would appreciate it, we call economies of scale. When they trigger in, automatically the tariffs or the prices come down, which happened in the case of solar. So all these things that we read in our textbooks actually do help us, not always, but to some extent does help us in understanding these things. So economics of scale is what is your answer, um,
So
Aditya.
maybe Surbi, I can elaborate that in the next class that
Yes,
we
ma'am.
have with the children. What
Sure,
about?
ma'am, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
I see one more hand raised. I think
Thank you,
Vidushi
ma'am.
had raised it earlier, but she has put her hand down. I can see Bhavyanshi from 11D.
Ma'am. Good morning, ma'am.
Hi.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask that most of people says that when you ask about company secretaries, they just serve as a lawyers for the company and they don't have any actual jobs. So can you tell me more about it, please?
See, I must say, so again, these are all, I can maybe, pick what one of your previous colleagues had mentioned, a myth, right? So, company secretary definitely is more towards looking at the legal compliances of the company, right? But they are not truly the lawyers. Lawyers do a completely different job. They fight petitions for you. They fight, cases for you, and they actually give you, advice on the legal terminologies, which are more broader in nature than only finance. Company secretaries, of course, you got it right, that they are, so to say, lawyers on the finance side of the things and helps the company to comply with the legal requirements. Imagine if you do not comply with it, what would it mean for a company? You cannot perform, right? Your certificates of incorporation, etc., can be withdrawn. So I would again say that make your judgment. If somebody is saying ask or interact with the people who are actually CS, right? That is how can help you. Do not make any, or I would say, do not have any preconceived notions about any job, because what it does, it limits your, opportunities. So that is my only recommendation to you, Bhavanshi. Very valid question. I can see certain questions in the chat box. So I'll come back to Yakshit. You have completed your economics honors from GU or another college. I did it from Delhi University, Akshit. And as I said, I pleaded to get me into the DU because I didn't apply in the first list. Again, please, guys, do apply in the first list itself. Are the books, Anand Joshi from 11D is asking, are the books from past on finance relevant till now? See, finance is a concept which will never be out of fashion, right? You can build on it, you can bring more finesse to it, you can add more technologies to it, but basics of finance nobody can change. So the books from the past, of course, if you are in the job, you would see that how the things are evolving, but your base has to be solid, right? If you do not have your basics right, you may not be able to comprehend with what various opportunities or various courses may look like. So yes, the short answer to your question is yes. Last question that is on the chat box is by Karthik Nair from 11C. Ma'am, what are the career options in the stock market? Oh, there are plethora of stock market options. There are, specialized services like broker agencies. There are people who are also portfolio managers who directly use the stock markets analyst services to see where one can invest. Mutual funds, I'm not sure if you have heard about, I'm sure by now you must have been introduced to it, but mutual funds are picking up a lot of pace in the recent decade. It really helps in diversifying the portfolio and understanding that which corporates are more stable in giving the returns, which corporates are more on the riskier side, which promises higher returns. So there are various mutual funds, for instance, more on stabilized returns to more on variation in the returns if you go for more riskier portfolio. So all these management of the portfolio that a mutual fund will invest in, say, 100 or 50 firms, is backed by a huge battalion of these stock market analysts. Then, of course, you have, these people, the corporates which are listed. They also have to deal on the stock markets because they are listed companies. So they need the stock market analysts or specialists. So there are multiple opportunities that are there. So there is no limit to it. You try to interact with some of them, and you'll find more such, opportunities. And as digitization is happening and more investment opportunities are coming up, more such things are introduced in terms of newer opportunities. So yes, ma'am, I don't see any more questions in the chat. No more hands. So maybe I'll hand it back to you, Dolly, ma'am.
Okay, I think Karthik has put up one more question, I guess, so we can answer that one, I think, in the
Sure.
end.
That's a very, again, a very important question. I can say a myth that trading stock is gambling. See, if you are not on the job side of the trading, if you're on the other side, it is a gamble. If I am in World Bank and if I'm investing in stock market, it is a gamble for me. The market can go up, it can go down. Your corporates in which you have invested, so you have to invest in certain shares. That depends on how you perceive your risk attached to that corporate or that share. So of course, for me it is a gambling, but for the person who's on the other side, it's a job. So again, it's a myth for the person who is in the job, but not for me. For me, yes, it is a myth, or I would say it is a truth that yes, it is a gambling for me. So I hope I was able to explain that. One more question. Ma'am, if you want to connect with you in future time, how we can do so. Up to Dolly, ma'am, how she wants to do that. And I will be more than happy to address any of the questions, concerns, anything that you have.
Children, you can all pass on your questions to me, and I will do that to Surbhi, and she can get back to you. And thank you, Surbhi. It was indeed a very, very productive session. Our students here have had a great learning experience, which would help our students to follow the right career path. This is what ma'am has been insisting. So children, you have to choose the right career path, right? Thank you, Surbhi. And I would like Ananya to say the official vote of thanks. Ananya, over to you.
Yes, ma'am. This was indeed an energy-packed session. I'm sure most of us will take inspiration from your work in the area of renewable energy and contribute towards nation building. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And I really hope that, we have so many fabulous people coming out of the school. We really hope that, at some point in time, I can be on the other side and working with you all guys in your capacity. So please, guys, the world is open for you. Just do not go by any myths. welcome it with open arms, and there is no limit for any opportunities. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity, Donnie ma'am, today. Really, thank you.
Surbi, it was really very nice having you back again. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Bye bye. Bye, everyone.